live from their home studios. Please welcome the hosts of DevCentral Connects, John Wagnon and Buu Lam.
Well, hello, DevCentral community. We are here today for another DevCentral Connects at our usual time, Thursdays at 12:30 Pacific time. Really excited for this show today. Today is going to be a very packed show, so we're actually going to move along pretty quickly here. So without further ado, I'll actually bring on my co-host for today, Mr. John Wagnon. John, how you doing?
Boo, I'm doing great. Really quick, I'm gonna kind of zoom back here and got to show you what I'm wearing. So we're a little bit Twinkies today. I've got the green screen behind me. It's probably not that, probably pretty obvious. I got the green screen, but anyway, so there may be a bit of green being picked up, but
right.
Yeah, just happy to be in my F5 sweater.
Yeah. Is your tree showing up?
Yeah. Let me see. Oh yeah. Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
There is it's a see-through tree. That's awesome, man. I didn't think about that. Super cool.
Yeah, I wanted to, I'll quickly highlight, well, first of all, down here, there's a link if anybody wanted to buy these, the sweater and the beanie. Do you call them a beanie, John, or a toque? We call them toques up here.
Beanie, like a beanie hat is what I've called it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so those are actually for sale items on shop.f5.com. Who knew we'd be peddling merch on this channel, but here we are.
Merch. You got to get the merch, people. And interestingly, it's a very nice sweater. Like, if you whatever, it's like nice and heavy and comfortable. So
yeah, I've enjoyed it. I've lived in this sweater for a couple days at this point. I will wash it at some point before my next time seeing people in public. But for now, I'm going to wear it quite a bit. So yeah, really excited about it. Also excited about the show today. We got a ton of stuff to go through in terms of guests that we're going to go and speak to. And so today we're actually talking to people who were previously F5 customers who made the leap from customer to an actual F5 employee. And I've mentioned this in a LinkedIn post, but I think F5 customers have made some of the best F5 employees. So I'm really glad to have these people on board.
Yep. Absolutely.
So without further ado, we're going to switch to that right away. So I'm going to take us on a little bit of a break here and bring us on with our very first guest.
Well, Dr. Rahm, here we are, man. This is for those of you who have been a part of DevCentral Connects before, you may not think that this is such an unusual combination on the screen together, right? But Jason, you were at a different company before F5, and so I guess looking back on your journey, what were the things you were doing before F5, and then we'll have a couple other questions after that.
Yeah, I worked for a large rental car company before F5, and we did quite a lot with at the time load balancing. But we also had services on top of that. And so I did a lot of network engineering type stuff, did a lot of internal. We had a very large enterprise, and so a lot of internal routing. So very, very familiar with routing protocols and switches and ACLs and firewall rules for internal stuff. But yeah, a lot of network engineering stuff, not a whole lot of coding stuff until close to the end when I started really digging into what F5 technologies provide.
Yeah, I love that, and that's kind of a good segue into the next question. I know where when you worked at that rental car company, you were part of the DevCentral community back then, even as a non-F5 employee, and you were the very first winner of the first iRules contest, if I remember right. So maybe give us a bit of perspective of your time on DevCentral as a customer, prior to becoming a member here on our team.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually was with DoD even before that company, and that's when I found DevCentral, and I was working on an iRule that allowed us to take command of what was built into a thick client and unchangeable. I don't know how many people deal with contracts, but anytime you have to change something to the way a product works, especially when it's with the government, it is costly. And so we looked at ways that we could get around that without having to make changes to those thick clients. And iRules was something that allowed us to do that on the fly. And if they came into the wrong data center, we'd totally redirect them back to the data center we think that they should have been at. And that way, our mission planners could get to where they need to do and do the things they needed to do well. And so from a technical standpoint, I was really fascinated by what the products could do. But on top of that, I was being helped by people who are core developers of the F5 products, which was pretty amazing that they cared enough about what they were doing and in getting traction with the products that they were out there, not just doing their day job of making sure that the stuff worked, but helping customers use it, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I am also shocked that it takes a long time and headaches to get something done in the government.
Right.
Not at all. Not at all. Well, hey man, so obviously you made the jump over to F5. So tell us a little of the story of some of the decision there. What's the story that brought you to F5?
Yeah, so I had been doing the networking thing for long enough that I wasn't really looking for a job, because the rental car company that I was at, I was really happy there. We got to do a lot of interesting projects. They didn't move quickly, and so I kind of like to learn. And when I stop learning, I get bored. And it wasn't that there wasn't opportunity to learn; it's just projects were slated for so long that it was easy to get in ruts. And so with the community, that gave me an opportunity on my lunch breaks and all that to go into the lab, because we had lots of lab gear. Anybody's asking questions, I'd mock it up and build it and do all that. And so really I built a lot of skill that I wasn't even using in my day job, just because people were asking questions and I was interested in learning. And so I would go discover. I had opportunities at other vendors. There was one particular vendor that asked me, and I'd thought about it, but ultimately I didn't believe in all their products. And as a sales engineer or whatever, you have to sell it whether you believe in it or not. And I just, integrity wise, I just couldn't get behind some of the stuff that I would have had to sell. So I was like a big no to that. But man, I was a big believer. I drank all the Kool-Aid for F5 early on, and still love the products. And so, when the opportunity came open, I was like, that's available. And I applied, and yeah, rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history. And so here you are on the F5 team, on the DevCentral team. So as we talk to our different guests today, the last question we'll ask them is, what have you been doing at F5 since you joined F5? I dare say this audience likely knows exactly what you've been doing, Jason, as a critical member of the DevCentral team. But so maybe I'll just kind of modify that a bit. What are some things that you've enjoyed being on this side of the DevCentral team as a member versus maybe a user on the customer side?
Well, yeah, on this side, I get to be an advocate for a community in a way that I can actually help change. On the customer side, I was always an advocate for DevCentral and did my best to make sure that I was harboring community on that side. But on this side, I actually get to impact that. And so that's good. And I've been at F5 and DevCentral for the duration of my career. And there's opportunities to go elsewhere, but I love what we do. I love engaging our community. I love advocating for the community. And, just on our side of it, we get to do fun stuff like this, like live streaming and writing code or writing articles or investing in not just DevCentral, but Stack Overflow and Reddit and all these other adjacent communities where questions around our technology are being asked.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, not only do you love the community loves you right back. We all love you, and we appreciate the impact you've made, certainly on the customer side, winning that first iRule contest, but even beyond that, the long tail of the impact you've had on this community. So it's been awesome, man. We've all been the beneficiary of the impact of Jason Rahm. So awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks for being on this show today. I know we talk a lot, and we'll be back, with another live stream with you next week. But we'll move on to our next guys. But thanks for being here, for this little time today, Jason.
Absolutely. Thank you, community. Love you all. Happy holidays.
Awesome, man.
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for joining me today. We are looking forward to chatting with you because you've got some interesting stuff that you've been up to at F5. And previous to F5, you were a customer and a DevCentral user. So Maybe you could tell us about what you were doing before F5.
Sure, Boo. I was a U.S. DoD contractor working on some advanced cryptographic authentication systems for the U.S. Navy.
Oh, wow. That's cool. And I think a lot of people will know you from DevCentral already, but maybe you can tell us about, well, what your username was, and what you were doing with DevCentral before joining F5, and maybe even some stuff you're still contributing after.
Sure. Username, I think it's Kevin G. Stewart. Not too cryptic right there. I've been on DevCentral probably since about 2005 or 6, I think. When we were doing our authentication systems, I was part of a team that did all the big IPs and the big, the fire passes back in the day. And this is before, most people could really spell PKI. So we did a lot of that crypto, smart card authentication stuff directly on the big IPs. So I was intimately aware or familiar with, how the iRules worked and how the crypto worked. And we did a lot of that stuff directly on the big IPs to enable, crypto-based auth.
Oh, wow. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And so, I guess you were heavily leaning on DevCentral at that time?
Oh, yeah. It's actually interesting. I submitted a, back in, I think it was 2007, we had you guys had an iRule contest. And I submitted one of my PKI iRules, and I won second place in 2007. Interestingly enough, Jason Rahm won first place in 2005 when he was a customer.
Oh, that's awesome. I was gonna say, I found it very hard to believe that you won second place in an iRule contest, but
there was some good
Jason
stuff out
Rahm.
there.
With Jason Rahm too, that's a hard guy to beat as well. So that's cool to see. So maybe you could tell us about how you actually started working at F5. Is there a story behind how you joined the company?
Sure. It was interesting. So right after winning or second winning the iRule contest, I got a call from a guy in the Fed, the Fed sales part of F5, and one thing led to another, and I got recruited. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Did you already know him or have a relationship with him in the first place, or just
I
kind of
had met him at a sales conference. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So just briefly.
That's awesome. And I mean, since you've joined F5, you've been pretty prolific. Maybe you can kind of tell us about some of the things that you've done along the way and what you're doing now at F5.
Sure. So today I am a senior security solutions architect. That's hard to say. A lot of S's in there. I work on the commercial side, specifically with our TLS and crypto stack. So not a lot has really changed. I've been working on the SSL orchestrator product and versions of that since the very beginning in 2014, when that was just a very, very simple iRule that we used for the Department of Defense, which of course eventually became this big, really, really cool thing that we call SSL orchestrator today. So I've been a part of that process, since the very beginning. I worked on a lot of the authentication stuff, early on with Kerberos and PKI and Smart Card Auth, and I've just been doing a lot of that ever since.
Awesome. Wow, that's a cool story, Kevin. I got to say, like personally, you've been a huge asset to me. We've worked together on customer situations before, and you've been a huge help. And yeah, I could speak for everyone to say that you've been a huge asset to F5. So great to hear your story.
Thank you.
All right, that was great to have Kevin on. Interesting fun fact that he came second in an iRule contest that was just highlighted there. I couldn't believe it when he said that, but then when he said it was Jason that won first, I was like, all right, that's pretty good. I'm joined next by Joe Martin. Joe, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I am really good. Actually, for folks who didn't see Joe on Monday, you might want to flip through youtube.com/DevCentral, and you'll actually see Joe again, who was joining us on Monday to talk about the Log4j stuff. So Joe is one of the security brain trusts here at F5 as far as being a security solutions architect. So glad to have you on again. Joe, maybe you can tell us about what you were doing before your time at F5?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was working for a very large international nonprofit organization based in Salt Lake City. was there for about 9.5 years before joining F5, primarily working on network engineering, also some network level security firewalls. And then probably about halfway through my tenure there, we switched from, I'll call it less capable load balancers to F5. And that started a sharp learning curve on all things F5, including iRules. And then once the application owners started to learn the power of iRules, then my job got really interesting because they wanted me to make it do things that their application couldn't, I guess, or they didn't want to take the time to, or how iRules go.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's awesome. So I'm sure if you were working on iRules at that time, you would have been a member on DevCentral.
Absolutely, yes. Quickly found that as a invaluable resource for really anything F5, but particularly iRules. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Did you join any of the iRule contests at all?
No, I never joined any of those contests, but shortly after joining F5, obviously there's new hire training. And back when Colin, how did I forget his name? Back when Colin was on DevCentral team, he would run a iRules contest for the new hire SEs. And I did win that contest, the new hire iRules contest. A good, interesting DevCentral story is I was working on, I don't even remember what the iRule was, but something particularly difficult to get it to behave exactly the way I wanted to. And I remember pinging, I only knew him as Julio on DevCentral, but quickly learned it was Aaron Hooley. And at one point, I don't remember if it was a direct message or something, but I was, the whole back and forth on DevCentral was just a little too slow. So I asked him if I could call him. He said absolutely, and so I felt like I was talking to the iRule god at the time. I still certainly feel that way, but yes. I felt like privileged to be able to talk to Aaron Hooley on the phone.
Yeah,
I'm sure he'll be embarrassed if he hears this.
That's cool. Yes, he is prolific indeed. And actually, our research team in the back just noted that Colin's last name is Walker. Sometimes watches the show and comments. So if you are watching, Colin, shout out to you. Joe, maybe you can touch on how you actually came to work for F5.
Pretty similar to everyone else's story. F5 customer, my account team, there was our sales guy and our SE. The SE ended up leaving F5 to go out for another opportunity. And my SE, my sales guy contacted me through some other people and said, "Hey, we have this open position. Would you be interested?" And I thought, sure, sounds interesting enough, and the rest is history. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Cool. And your time at F5 has been awesome. I've been able to work with you on some stuff, and it's been really cool. Maybe you can tell us about the things that you've kind of progressed on and are working on now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I'd already had some background in security, but more in some application, and some background with working with applications via the iRules, but never directly in application security. But shortly after joining F5, I just latched on to the whole application security space and really dove headfirst into that. And now that's my primary focus as a senior security solutions architect. Wow, that's a lot of S's. I focus primarily on application security. So all of our WAF offerings, bots and automation, had jumped into the Shape technologies as well. So, and loving it. I love working with customers and helping them solve problems. And also in this architect role, I'm a liaison between the customers and our product management. So being able to help customer needs drive product roadmap. It's just a really fun role.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know I've gotten to work with you on some stuff, and anybody who is in North America working on big security initiatives, they'll probably run into you at some point if they haven't already. So thank you for being such a great coworker, Joe.
Thank you.
Well, hey there, Shane. Thanks for joining us. So first quick question is, what were you doing before you joined F5?
Before I came to F5, I was actually a customer engineer. I used F5 at a few different places. but definitely was in there just like our customers today, upgrading, building VIPs, building WAF policies, trying to make the world a better place, one F5 at a time.
Love it. WAF policies, not for the faint of heart, but you were rocking it out. That's awesome, man. Well,
absolutely. And early on too, right? Like I feel like WAF has gotten a lot easier to use with threat campaign, some of that stuff. Early on, it was like, go in there and roll your sleeves up and go build policy. It was amazing. That's it was right. Like the most powerful thing ever.
That's awesome. Yep. I was building WAF policies way before it was easy to build WAF policies.
That's exactly right.
That's awesome, man. Well, hey, so as a customer, I know you were a DevCentral member. So what did you think about DevCentral as a customer, and maybe how did you use it back then?
Yeah, it was one of those things where if you have a weird question, you always felt like the community would be there for you. I always had to try to keep up with one of the other local people here in town, Brad Parker, who was always answering questions. I mean, for a few years there, he was a monster. He answered, I think, more than anybody in a few years. So I always felt like I tried to try to be part of him and help the community and see what else I could do. But at the same time, you're in there reading things and learning at the same time. It's that reciprocal nature of like you're learning and helping. And that's what the community was all about.
Oh, absolutely. And it's people like you that make it what it is, even today still. So it's people helping people. So that's we appreciate you back then and today, now that you've joined F5. So hey, speaking of joining F5, what's kind of the story there? Was any kind of story transitioning to now being an F5 employee?
Yeah. I feel like the DevCentral community also kind of spins in with the local user groups, right? So you're always in there, you're helping the people who are local to your community while you're out there on the forums, helping people across the globe. I did a lot of user group interaction too. And it was a lot of those of like, you raise your hand, you're like, hey, I'm doing this cool thing with F5. Look at this cool thing I'm doing. Some of them was, stopping DDoS or showing how you can block against slow posts or slow lures. And I remember doing a bunch of presentations for the local user group community. You start knowing the F5 people, you start like showing how cool the technology is. And it really one of those things where like, I was excited to go to the user groups and present some cool new thing that I could go show off. And it wasn't even early on, like I wanted to work at F5. I mean, I knew this was a cool technology. It wasn't till the local team started expanding that I was like, this has to be the place that I work. I actually came across as an SE. So, me being a previous engineer, I was an SE at F5 for almost 3.5, 4 years before switching to my current role as an account manager. So I'm definitely one of the few out there that was an engineer previously. I definitely wear my customer hat a lot and try to be very customer focused as an account manager and make sure that we give our customers absolutely the best focus we possibly can about solving their problems.
Yeah, well, which is what it's all about. I mean, that's your goal, that's your target, right? So, and I got to say, I was the beneficiary of one or more maybe of those user group presentations. I was like, man, this Shane guy, he knows what he's doing on stopping DDoS attacks. So this is awesome. So that's super cool.
Also the Hack to the Future. Oh man, we can't forget that, John, where the whole team was together, making sure that we had all the fun there about trying to stop DDoS attacks while also protecting your app. There was a lot of fun there. If those remember the Boston Agility Conference, so that was pretty amazing.
Right. Lots of fun in Boston with Doc Brown, the whole thing. So that was super cool.
For sure.
That was super cool. All right. Well, Shane, hey, I know you mentioned you were an SE and then now you're an account manager. So maybe tell us just a quick word about that. What are some of the benefits of being an SE or being an account manager? Like, how's it going?
Yeah, it's an interesting transition, and it's honestly a very difficult one too, because when I was a customer prior to even working at F5, you get so in the weeds and you're so focused on the technical details that as you become an SE, you're solving customer problems with technology. That to be an account manager, you have to kind of let go a little bit of the technology and really focus more on like the business problems, like what is the customer trying to solve and why. And that's a tough one, right? Because as a person who loves technology, it isn't always easy to do that. And you have to focus on the bigger picture sometimes. But I do think that as you see the younger generation of people, and my current SC, Matt Stovall, is absolutely amazing. He comes in and surprises me and solves problems that I don't think I ever would have been able to solve. And it's being able to see that group and being able to have different ideas. F5 is all about inclusion. It is that different viewpoint from so many different ways and having so many smart people together that makes this work. And F5 can do so many different things. You guys on DevCentral we talk about iRules, we talk about WAF policies. there might be 10 ways to solve a problem, and being able to put all those together and talk about them is really one of the strengths of F5.
Yeah, I love that. So many great people coming together. It's like you said, it's the strength of F5. It's the strength of DevCentral, the community. And so, yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, hey, Shane, I appreciate you as a DevCentral user, when you're a customer, and then now as an F5, as a fellow F5er, right? A fellow F5 employee. So it's just awesome having you on the team. And thanks for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
Well, awesome, man. Great time hearing from Shane. And now we get to hear from another one of the giants in F5, Kyle McKay. So Kyle, thanks for being on the show today, man.
Thanks, John. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Oh, man, it's great to have you. And, maybe by now we can start to see the pattern. We're going to have a few questions for you today, Kyle. But like everyone else that we've talked to today, you were a customer before you were part of F5. So maybe tell us a little bit about that. What were you doing before you joined the F5 ranks?
Yeah, good question. I wasn't expecting that one, actually. Just kidding. So for me personally, I directly coming from before F5, I was a senior network and security administrator. I did all things related to networking, whether that's routing, whether that's switching, firewalling, wireless, and then dabbled in the security realm. But I was actually part of a broader DevOps team. So that DevOps team was responsible for the reliability of the core application of this oil and gas company that I worked for. And in this case, that got me well ahead into the realms of infrastructure as code and automation. One of the final projects I worked on before coming inevitably to F5 was a big migration into AWS, which required and involved a lot of automation of big IP products as well as some other vendors. But that experience proved very invaluable and obviously directly led me here.
That's amazing. Amazing to hear all that. Well, so tell me about DevCentral then. As a customer, were you part of DevCentral? And then, if so, how did that kind of impact your day-to-day and your knowledge of F5?
Yeah, so DevCentral I've always considered a real backbone of the kind of F5 to customer relation. So for me as a customer, I leveraged DevCentral on an ad hoc basis, much like probably most of the people who are viewing this call and this video today. When you have a problem that you can't solve and you're looking for other opinions, this is a phenomenal platform for exactly that reason. So for me, anytime I got stuck on something, anytime I needed to look up a potential solution, or anytime I needed to just consult with the broader community, DevCentral was that platform for me. So, fully admit I wasn't on DevCentral every day, all day, but something that I found myself browsing probably once a week when I was looking for help with something. So yeah, for me, DevCentral is a phenomenal community. I love seeing all the interaction between members. And one of the other guests earlier commented that it's so nice to see even employees and representatives of F5 engaging on these platforms so regularly. So that was one of the things that I really love.
Yeah, that's super cool. It's just such a great, asset, a great resource for employees and customers alike. There's so many people around F5 that say, hey, I use DevCentral, that kind of thing. Well, good stuff, man. Well, that's great to hear. So then obviously you made the transition over to F5. So I guess what was the story of coming over to F5?
Yeah, not unlike the other examples some of the other the guests or panelists had mentioned. So for me, one of in my territory, the solutions engineer who I knew, he had moved on to a new role, and the role was just vacant for a while. And one of the teams I was covering for this territory, I met with in a couple of meetings, and after a few meetings, they reached out to me and asked if this was something I was interested in. For me, it was actually a very challenging time in my personal life because I had just had my first child. So when this opportunity came about, my child was about 1 month old, and this was, brand new experience. My wife and I were struggling to sleep, but this opportunity came about, and it's the solutions engineer role, previously called the sales engineer. That role was something that I always admired. I always wondered, how does somebody get into that? what is the process? What is the career trajectory to get there? So I never really understood it, but I love the idea of it. And so when I was approached about it, I knew kind of in that moment, this was something that I needed and I wanted to do. And F5 products being at the time, in my own experience as a customer, being kind of the premier brand. This is the company that, I saw doing all the right things, and I really wanted to be a part of that. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
I love it. I love it. I think with any of us that have kids, we can relate to the lack of sleep and all that. But awesome, man. I'm glad you were able to kind of think through that, despite the fact that you weren't sleeping much, and come to the point where it's like, hey, it's time to join F5, and we're glad that you did, man. We're better for it. So you mentioned the SE, the solutions engineer, the sales engineer. Is that what you're still doing now, or have you moved on, or what does life look like now at F5 for you?
Yeah, so I started up as a solutions engineer, and I am still in that role. I cover a specific territory, and in my case, I cover a territory called Alberta up in Canada, Southern Alberta to be precise. So that entails a lot of general knowledge of the F5 portfolio altogether, whether that's Volterra, whether that's Big IP, Nginx, Shape. But I've sort of carved out a little bit more of a specialty in security specifically. So I'm actually a SME WAF. We have this internal SME discipline called our SME WAF. So we curate meetings, and we sort of help broker some feedback into the product management groups. So I lead that with another colleague of mine internally. So very much try to carve out that security discipline and master that a little bit more than a generalist could. But yeah, effectively, I'm in the same role, and I'm loving it. I'm been very privileged to say I've had a lot of great mentors and colleagues here at F5. So they've helped me kind of become who I am in the last 3.5 years and grow as an employee. So it's been a lot of fun.
I love it. Well, hey, man, I love it that you're still in that role, but there's a lot to learn, and goodness, especially in the security space, there's never a dull moment, right? So
never a dull moment, John.
That's right. Well, good deal. Well, Kyle, it's been a pleasure, man. I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate your contribution to DevCentral and to F5, and frankly to the greater security world, in general. So, man, I really appreciate you, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, John. Pleasure.
All right.
All right. Well, that was a good time.
That was awesome, man. That went by so fast,
Yeah, it did. We're a little bit over time here. We got only a couple other things to talk about, but what we will talk about, and I was plugging this throughout the show, is this link here, f5.com/careers. A number of these folks are in positions that similar positions are actually posted on there right now. So if any of the things that our guests are doing today interest you, if you're not an F5 employee at this point, you might want to check out the careers page, because there's a lot of postings on there. We're hiring like crazy right now, so good place to check out. And one other link that I will post here as well, shop.f5.com, if you want one of these shirts or the beanie. I got my beanie behind me here as well.
The merch. Yep. With the see-through things right here, right? So green screen effect.
Great for green screen. Cool. So we just got a couple shows that we will talk about here coming up. We've got on next Tuesday, Jason will be back, and he'll be talking about troubleshooting iRules. And I believe he'll be doing one of those live coding sessions again. I think I'm okay to promise that at this point. But that was a really engaging way to interact with Jason last time. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out when he does that. And then the DC team will be on holidays. And so we're going to take a little bit of a pause from the live shows, and then we will be back in the new year. At least the first show that we have scheduled will be at the Edge Tuesday, January 4th. And I'll have on Lori McVitie. And she was recently a keynote speaker at Edgehog Day, which was a virtual conference about edge computing. And she was talking about how edge computing looks today, and how that a comparison to what technologies were like previously. So we'll be talking about how do BBSs relate to the modern edge. Should be interesting.
Super cool. Yeah. Always great to hear from Laurie too. That's always a good time.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I think that's it for us today. Thank you very much, John, for joining me. Any last words from you?
Well, it's just so I won't have another show before the first of the year. I know Jason, like you said, he's got the troubleshooting. So as we close out 2021, I just want to say thanks to you, Boo, for everything you do for the team and just to the community at large. Thanks to everyone, for being part of the community, making it the best technical community that there is to have, right? And I just hope everyone has a great holiday season. Enjoy some downtime, hopefully, and we'll see you again in 2022.
Great. Thank you very much, John. We'll see everybody next time. Bye.
All right.
Hey there, community. Maybe you've seen the t-shirts and posters for the 6 stages of debugging, but if you haven't, they are. Number 1, that can't happen. Number 2, well, that doesn't happen on my machine. Number 3, that shouldn't happen. Number 4, why does that happen? Number 5, oh, I see. And then number 6, whoa, wait. How did that ever work in the first place? Do you feel seen? Well, I do. And whether it's a syntax problem, semantic issues, or a runtime problem, sometimes it's challenging to get out of jail, get past go, collect your $200, and move on to the next big thing in your day. Well, this Tuesday, December 21st at 9:30 a.m. Pacific on the Core, we're going to get into iRules troubleshooting steps and some tools to add to your toolbox. I hope to see you there.